LAWsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, all you LAWsome listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. Today on the show, very excited to be talking again with Ken Hardison. Ken, I think it's been since 2018 when you last joined the LAWsome Podcast.
I'm glad to be back.
Welcome back.
Thought you forgot about me.
I'm glad to have you back. And for those of you who may be just learning about Ken, Ken's fought for people's rights as a personal injury lawyer for over 40 years. Hailing out of North Carolina, now in South Carolina, he built one of the largest personal injury law firms in North Carolina, and he's the founder and president of PILMMA, one of the largest legal marketing and management associations designed especially for injury and disability lawyers across the country. So today's topic, it's about a recent report that Ken and his group at PILMMA commissioned around consumer behavior, specifically in how consumers choose their personal injury lawyer today. Extremely important information, especially for any lawyers who are advertising or marketing. It's a rather telling report, and I think it's imperative for law firm owners and marketers alike to be aware of the results that Ken and his group have pulled from this report. And that's why I'm excited to have Ken today on the show to talk about this important topic. So welcome again, Ken.
Thank you, my friend.
This study, my understanding is it was about a 400-person study entitled Consumer Behavior Study. I have for those of you listening and viewing, I have the study right here, but we'll have a digital copy that we're going to link in the summary notes here if you want to access that. And I would recommend going through that and pouring through what it's telling. But coming back to it, it's entitled How Consumers Choose Their Personal Injury Lawyer. And in it, Ken, you share factors that are influencing hiring decisions today. So let's just start by you maybe giving an overview. What are some of the key findings from the study?
Well, I thought, we wanted to find out what their attitude, towards how they perceive personal injuries, because, everybody says we're all ambulance chasers. But really, over 70% of the people really don't feel that way. It's only like 29%. So that's a good thing, I think. And then what characteristics are they looking for when they choose? What things are they looking for when they choose a personal injury lawyer? What's the triggers that's going to make them say, I'll really have you? And then their whole attitude about legal advertising. And so we commissioned this company called Audience Audit, a research firm, to go out and survey 400 people, and most of them had used a personal injury lawyer, but not all of them, probably 70% of them. They fell into three groups. Like one group was the trusting ones. They know you need a lawyer. They know that you get a good lawyer, you're going to get more money. And they know they're smart enough to know that, that they're not smart enough to do it. And so those are like, you don't really have to sell them on the idea they need a lawyer. They need it. But here, and then you got the skeptics, which is the 30%, or 29%, and then the trust, another 30%. And the skeptical think that lawyers are ambulance chasers, that they're all about the money, that they're greedy, and that and they also don't trust the insurance companies. They think they're all about money too. So they just don't trust. They're very non-trusting, just the opposite of trusting. But here was the most important thing: 40%, like 41%, we call those conflicted. And this is really this is the one you need to really pay attention to, because they know that a lawyer could help, but their biggest concern is what people will think of them if they hire a lawyer to get in a personal injury. They think that people, their peers, their friends will think that they're greedy. And so my deal is you've got to convey that. You need to do advertising and educational stuff that lets people know you're not being greedy, that that's what you pay, that's what everybody pays premiums for. You got a duty to protect your family. You only get one shot, that type of deal. Because a lot of them think they can handle it themselves, until they get involved in it.
Well, I definitely want to dive into that a little bit further too, especially, so that lawyers really have a sense of how to be addressing messaging and things within their marketing. Anything else overview wise that stood out to you in it?
I think that was, there was some things that it just kind of confirmed what I always thought. There was some surprises. I was real surprised that still a lot of people don't know that you don't have to pay the lawyer till you get paid. And I've been seeing a lot of John Morgan billboards lately that says, free. And I think, knowing John, he's probably conducted a study himself privately, and he's figured that out. And so he's pushing that, it's free unless we win.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some lawyers doing that, but there's a lot that's just do the TV shows and different things and don't really stress that. So I think people got to remember that we just take it for granted that everybody knows that we don't charge unless we win, but they don't. I mean, probably over 50% of the people still don't know that.
I would agree. I mean, the concept of a contingency fee is foreign truly to a lot of people. You just, in my daily conversations with people outside of this industry, when I tell them I work with plaintiff's PI or contingency fee-based law firms, in most instances, it's they're confused by that. And I think that is maybe a blind spot that marketers have and lawyers have whenever they're having even initial intakes in conversations, and making sure that that's a question that's on the forefront of a lot of your potential clients' minds. Are you proactively addressing it and helping them work through that? But more importantly, I think, just as we're talking about, it's in the marketing where there's hesitancy. And if they never pick up the phone, you never have an opportunity to even address that potential objection, right?
Yeah. I mean, and here's another interesting thing that conflicted the biggest group. They kind of know, need a lawyer or whatever, but they also, a majority of that conflicted think that if they do get a lawyer, the lawyer's going to get a big portion of it, so they won't end up with as much, which is completely false, because the Insurance Research Institute Council, whatever, did a study 25 years ago that said people that hire lawyers net 3 times more than claimants without lawyers. I mean, that's taken into consideration after paying the lawyer. You still end up with over 3 times as much. So, I used to do some marketing with that, and because I kind of confirmed something I always thought, that people thought the lawyer's going to get all the money. And so if I do it myself, I'll save money. It's sort of like, I was thinking about this too. Like I would do one of those commercials, like with a plumber, when you got a plumbing problem, you go in there and try to fix it yourself, and you blow everything up, and then you end up and the plumber says, I could have fixed this for $85, but now it's like $8,000 because you went in and tried to handle it.
Sounds like my home improvements.
Wouldn't that be a great commercial to use and say, hey, it's the same thing with your case. You're going to go in there, and do it politely, but say, get somebody that knows what they're doing. Quit trying to do it yourself. You're costing you and your family money.
As part of this, I do want to get into a little bit more on the actual details of this study, but high level, you mentioned you did commission an outside group to run this. Can you maybe take us back and our listeners back to what sparked you to commission this research effort and maybe what that process looked like?
Yeah, so I was thinking like 20 years ago, I went to an event, and there was a guy from Colorado that did a study. I think he did it himself. And he got, and the only thing I remember is that's the only commission study I'd ever seen really done that anybody shared. And I thought it got a lot of traction. Plus it was very, very enlightening to me, because back then he looked at it and he says the 2 biggest things back then was on your TV commercials, you have to be approachable and trustworthy. If you can convey that, you're going to get people to pick up the phone. I mean, I know the report said a lot more, but that stuck with me for years and years and years, which is why, we can get into all other things with that is with the social media and everything. And I think educational-based marketing, too, is a good way to do that.
And that's kind of what I wanted to get to, because did you say that was, 20 years ago? Yeah. How long ago was that? Yeah, so, let's assume over 2 decades ago, obviously, consumers have changed. There's been an evolution there. Were you surprised at maybe what his report suggested about consumers hiring lawyers to what your report suggested, or were they still largely in line?
I think they're different. I mean, I think that the consumer's a lot more educated now and's got a lot more resources than they did 20, 25 years ago, okay? Mm-hmm. You can't BS somebody. I mean, there's just too many things out there. So, Yeah, I think it's different. I mean, I still think that people hire lawyers they know, like, and trust. I believe that was good back then. It's still good now, but I think the way you do it and convey that and get that there is actually easier today than it was 25 years ago because there's so many other ways to reach them with social media, you know, and all these, podcasts and reports and
Hmm.
God, there's just so many ways to reach these people, and be in front of them.
Well, one thing even beyond marketing, one thing that's been it's just stood its test of time is the power of word of mouth,
Yeah.
and marketing essentially to your own network and leveraging relationships to generate referrals and new leads and cases. And your report really maybe suggested that was still thriving. The idea of word of mouth recommendations, leaning on friends and family
Yeah.
members.
Number one way they get a lawyer is asking family and friends.
So I mean, even in today's digital environment and all these marketing opportunities, what's your overall take on that, knowing that you've seen this evolution over the last several decades?
Yeah. Well, I've always said, I wrote a book probably 7, 8 years ago called Under Promise Over Deliver. And I talked about I call it the three phases of marketing: before representation, which everybody does; during representation, which is you give them a wow experience, creating that relationship, exceptional experience, which is during representation, and then after representation. And most lawyers just gave up. They just felt like everybody will remember them because you got them money, and that's just not true.
Hmm.
And so I've been preaching this since day one, since I started the Personal Injury Lawyers Marketing Management Association. That why would you want to go out and spend all these hundreds of thousands on before people don't know you to try to convince them to know you, like you, and trust you when you already got people there that you've satisfied and got good money for? And why don't you create systems to get them to refer you people? Because what we know is 20% of people will never refer you. I don't care if you get them $10 zillion because they're just not referrers. 20% of people will refer you, they're just going to do it. But there's 60% that would, number one, if they knew you wanted it. Number two, if you made it easy for them. And that's why I say create systems. And you kept on top of mind awareness with like newsletters, birthday cards, greeting cards, gifts,
Yep.
we used to do a annual client, past client, regular client, existing client. We had a big party every year, and invite everybody that's been a past client, their families, and just put on a big show with a band and feed them hot dogs and hamburgers. Have
Nice.
all the little games and bouncy things that kids can play on. Had clowns out there, had them painting faces, gave away a bunch of prizes, gave away a bunch of coolers and books and all kinds of stuff, and it was always a big hit. But we really pushed that. Listen, when I was practicing law, we were spending 7 figures on marketing. We were spending $1 million a year on TV, but still 42% of our cases came from past, not lawyers, not doctors, past clients' referrals.
Hmm.
And I credit that because we focused on that, because it's a lot cheaper to get a referral from a past client that knows you, likes you, trusts you, than it is from some stranger out there watching TV or listening to a radio show or looking at their Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You got a hell of a mountain to climb on that, which is done. And I think also that the better cases come from referrals as a general rule. My biggest cases have always came from old clients.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many ways, and we teach that at PILMMA, all these different methods and strategies on how to make it easy for people to refer you, their friends and family, but also not just make it easy, but also how to stay in front of them without, being overbearing. And this, I don't know, it's just, even back then, I mean, I was big on that because I got trained by some really good, smart people like Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham, very smart marketers, probably two of the best marketers alive right now.
I mean, everything you shared, I mean, you shared so many just practical things. A lot of times, people talk about marketing and just generalized ideas, but it's there. It's available to every local attorney out there. It's just a matter of,
Yeah.
are you willing to do that and pursue it? Clearly the data suggests that that's the most important group you should be marketing to
Yeah.
in terms of effectiveness, dollar for dollar.
Absolutely. I mean, we had like 5 or 6 systems, or strategies just for doing that.
If some of these attorneys and other marketers that are listening are like me, some of my big questions were, what were the specific characteristics that clients are seeking? You hit on a little bit of this, but let's get into the weeds here. What stands out, or what is it that someone's looking for when they're hiring a lawyer?
It was like 6 or 7 characteristics. Like 80% of them, they were looking for this. It was between 79 and 87%. The number one was that an attorney understands how insurance companies work. That means you need to be writing something or blogging or doing something or some re-report. This is the secrets the insurance companies don't want you to know, or, here, we used to work for the insurance companies. We know how they work. I always tell any time I get a PILMMA member that's used to be a adjuster or a defense lawyer, I said, there's your hook.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, and now that just confirms what I've always thought, because it makes people want to know secrets. And if you can tell them, the inside secrets on how the system works, they're going to hire you.
You played for the opposing team. You have their playbook.
That's right.
That's huge.
So that was like number one. And then the number two was if the attorney is board certified, which kind of goes in with another one, is they want somebody that really specializes in their type of accident. They want an expert.
Mm-hmm.
This also plays out. We had a PILMMA member in a city, and he had a small TV budget, but he was board certified trial attorney, and there's only 3% in that state. And then we were at a mastermind meeting one time. I said, you need to do this. And he made a commercial, and a very small spend, he got a lot of cases because they wanted that. He said, when he says only 3% of the attorneys in this state are board certified, and I'm one of them, well, that confirms what I was saying, that they want somebody board certified, somebody that's an expert. Mm-hmm. So the more you can show your expertise. Another way, if you don't, some states don't allow board certification in PI or trial, write a book. I mean, I had, when I was doing that was another thing that I think I was able to see way ahead of time, was that we created these little consumer books like 7 mistakes accident victims in North Carolina make and how to avoid them.
I remember those.
The 9 myths of workers' comp claims. We had disability secrets revealed. How to increase your chance of winning your case by 50%. Things like that, and we use those as lead magnets, and we also, believe it or not, put them in doctors' offices, and the ones that would let us. But it was a killer, man. It was a killer. And then we also, we gave them to clients and just tell them, listen, when you see somebody that's been hurt, injured, or disabled, give them this book and tell them this is the lawyer I used. That makes it easy for them. It's an icebreaker, makes you the authority, plus somebody's referring you and you're the expert. My God, it's a no-brainer.
It makes sense. That's a thing. It's like you see the data and it just makes sense. People want, if it's a commercial truck that has injured me or a family member, I want to know I'm hiring a lawyer that has dealt with commercial truck cases. And especially, just as you're saying, the board certification, assuming your state allows that, it's a huge competitive advantage when it comes to marketing and messaging. One thing I'll add is that the same is true when it comes to websites and ultimately what you're featuring on a particular web page. All too often we find personal injury lawyers that may have a main car accident lawyer page, but alongside that copy, they may be featuring a case result for a premises liability case or a medical malpractice lawsuit. In some instances, may not mention motor vehicle accidents at all in terms of the credentials that they're featuring on that page. And we believe that's such a major mistake for the purpose of what you're saying right here, Ken, is like they're looking for relevant experience. And if you're not showcasing that on all your key practice area pages, you're missing a huge opportunity on this point right here.
I agree. And here's one that kind of goes back to that one from 25 years ago. The attorney understands people like me. That means that you're approachable. That means that they trust you. They feel like you understand them. You're easy to talk to. We had one attorney, and y'all used to do the work. I remember down in Texas, Bob Kraft, and his whole deal was, his whole tagline, "We're easy to talk to."
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I always thought Kraft was very way ahead of his time, and that just shows you that he understood the deal. This is back, my God, around 2000, over 20,
late 90s or
in the 90s. That was his tagline.
That's incredible. Well, Bob was ahead of his time, and we still work with Craft Law. It's a 2-decade plus relationship there in terms of digital, and he has always, I mean, he's definitely slowed down now, but he's always been ahead of his time because he was so relatable to that point.
Yep.
He made a point to be relatable. I mean, he had a genuine personality, has a genuine personality altogether. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because simplicity, it's like, don't overthink this. It really is. People want some of these just these natural tendencies, these natural desires really come down to, as you've already alluded to, they want someone that's going to hold their hand and walk them through this storm.
Yeah. And then here's another one that kind of reinforces what I was saying. People don't know that you don't charge fees unless you win. They said 84% says one of the biggest important characteristics for attorney I choose is an attorney that charges no fees unless they win my case. Well, no lawyer that does PI work charges a fee unless you win the case.
Mm-hmm.
So 84% still said, well, I want one that don't charge up front. So that means you got some work to do to educate them. And then they want somebody, 80% wants somebody that plays strictly by the rules and ethics, which I thought was good.
There's when you and I think it's worth noting that, when you do look at some of the more successful marketers of our time and even before our time, the commonalities really relate to what we're talking about here. It really comes down to what the consumer is driven by, and today, as we've talked about, that evolves. There are changes in that. Now, some of the natural desires are certainly still there, but how they access information, how they spend time, what they're on, actual devices they're on when they're considering who to hire, that all matters. And I think that's a good segue into the concept of digital media, especially social media, maybe even the use of mobile-friendly devices and such. So what insights, if any, do you have related to maybe some trends that are starting to shape how lawyers should be interacting with clients?
Yeah, well, this conflicted part, they're mostly under 50. Or they're either skeptical or they're trusting, or like most of them were over 50. So that tells me, and that ones that are under 50, the ones that they're more likely to use their phones, or they're more likely to be on social media, and they're not upset about. They're fine with lawyers advertising, and they say, yeah, I might look at a Facebook ad and call a lawyer and talk to them and might hire them. Whereas the skeptical probably never would, right? Mm-hmm. So that tells me that you need to be mobile friendly. You need to, as much as I hate social media, it's a necessary evil. I mean, I don't like it because it's just, because I'm old school, but I still do it because I know it works.
That's it.
If nothing else, and this is just me, and I'm not an expert on social media, but I always look at social media as sort of like just top of mind awareness, unless, I know you probably get some cases off of it with direct response, but very few. And most of the ones I've seen in our masterminds, they're the speed and greed people. They just want a lot of money real fast. They're not your best clients. But I think it's almost like a newsletter. You're staying out there, you're building your brand, you're staying out there, you're humanizing yourself, you're being relatable, and then with everything else you're doing, if you're doing that, they see a billboard, and then they get hurt and they see you on TV or whatever, they do a big old search and you're on the first page. Oh, I remember that Hardison guy. Yeah, he was real easy. He's like a nice guy, but he seems like he's tough, but he seems like he's nice. So yeah, I'm gonna look him up, and I'm gonna go to his website, which we know that 85% of the people go to the website. Even if they get a referral from a friend, they still go check you out before they decide to pull the trigger and call you or go in your office or
That's
text
it.
you or whatever. So, yeah, I thought that was really important, that the ones the conflicted segment that they kind of know you need a lawyer, but they're afraid that people would think that they're greedy. Well, that's the kind of stuff you need to put on social media. Hey, listen, when everything that you do, if somebody calls us and asks us, "Do we represent you?" Do you know ethically we can't even tell them that because we got a client attorney privilege, so nobody needs to know that you hired a lawyer. That would be some kind of ad I would put on social media if I was a lawyer. See what I'm saying? Because that's one of the pain. That's one of the things. That's one objection that holds them back sometimes.
It's understanding the psyche of that client and really understanding those unvoiced maybe objections that they're wrestling with, and that's I don't know if this percent or this study really spoke to the percentage. I don't recall, but there's still a healthy amount of people that never even pursue a lawyer for all the reasons we've mentioned, all those objections that they've just internalized and likely never voiced. And so you're actually creating a bigger pool of potential clients by really drilling down into this marketing messaging that Ken's suggesting. So I love that feedback. I love the direction, and I think it's going to serve our listeners extremely well for those that actually pursue that on social. Any other final suggestions, at least on the social side, Ken, that you would have for lawyers reaching or better reaching some of these different groups?
You're probably better at that than I am, Tanner. What would you say? I'm going to ask you that question because I feel like you're more qualified than me to answer that. What would you say?
I appreciate that. I think, truly it's everything we're talking about here. And that's what I was assuming you were going to come back with. We've hit on authenticity multiple times already, because authenticity shows who you are, what you are, what you stand for, and it creates relatability. And we've often said familiarity breeds trust. And social media is one of the best ways to create familiarity and awareness because you're up there. Very small budget allows you to keep your content up there in front of your network. And if you can constantly provide value, doing a lot of the things, Ken, you've already stressed, that is one of the biggest differentiators. But the problem is that most lawyers aren't willing to commit and sustain that effort.
Yeah, it's like, we used to tell, I remember 10 years ago, we would tell you, if you're not going to do the blog every week or on a regular basis, just don't do it. I tell people with newsletters, if you're just going to do it haphazardly, just don't do it. And that is the biggest problem with lawyers and everybody, is that they don't follow through and carry through because life gets in the way, works get in the way. And I was coming back from a consult yesterday with a law firm. And I was thinking these guys really have done really good, And some of the partners when they were hiring me, they said, "Well, we don't have time to do all this stuff." Da, 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 da. But here's the deal: when somebody tells me they don't have time to do this, they don't have time to do masterminds, they don't have time to do the newsletters, they don't have time. We all have the same amount of hours, minutes, and days in our life. And so, how is it that some lawyers can do it and some can't? Because they make it important. You have time to do exactly what is the most important to you in life. And whether that be your family, whether that be when you're firm, whether it's in anything. We make time for what we really, really want and what's really, really important to us. And so I'm just assuming that these guys that don't do it, it's just not that important to them. They want it, but it's not important enough to them to set aside time or to go out and hire somebody and hold somebody accountable. You know what I'm saying? And that is the difference. I always said focus, you're going to have focus, and just stay with it. Focus and dedication, execution, and don't get sidetracked, and just, I can tell you, since and I'm trying to implement this in a lot of law firms, do quarterly planning, break things up to quarters, not have annual goals, have quarterly goals, or have 5 main things, but then have quarterly goals, and then do 2 or 3 things each quarter. But every time you decide on 2 or 3 projects, before you leave that meeting, have a what, a who, and a deadline. for every task that's got to be done to get that project done in the 90 days, and hold people feet to the fire. That's the only way you're gonna get it done. If you just say like, we'll get this done by the end of the quarter, 50-50 at best. But you see, people respect what you inspect. So if you've got deadlines and they're held accountable when you actually do enforce it, that's we do the summit every year, and you gave a great presentation this year too, by the way, as usual. A lot of people. Our biggest, it wasn't the two keynotes that everybody was raving about. It was yours and Justin Lovely's. Just so you know, y'all got the biggest fan base out of that deal. Not the ones that I had to pay to speak. And they were good speakers, don't get me wrong. They were good. But I think the practical stuff that y'all gave was so much more valuable to the people that attended. There were just some great takeaways. But anyway, I kind of got off point, and I apologize.
You closed, honestly, with what I believe kind of pulls all this together, which is action. We can share this information about this commission study and the thousands of dollars that you've invested in pulling this report for the good of the industry. Truly, it's a matter of, are you going to do something with it? Are you going to challenge your current messaging against what data we've just talked about? Are you going to get your social media in gear and be consistent with that? It's a challenge for all of us, Ken, and I appreciate that. I'm grateful as always for your time and your wisdom. Well over 40 years in the marketing world of legal. There is a lot to be learned from you, my friend. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, and I'm still learning every day. I mean, the deal is this thing. I've heard you say at events before. I remember watching one of your presentations. You said, keeping up with Google is like trying to paint a moving train. I'll never forget that. And that is, I mean, the digital stuff, changes like the weather. And so you just have to be on top of it all the time. And I depend on people like you because I can't be great at everything. So,
vice versa. Yep, absolutely. Ken, what's the best way for listeners to find you or contact you?
Okay. Well, I've got a website called kenhardison.com. You can also do info@pilmma.org. That's PILMMA.org. Info@PILMMA. And the girls, if you want to talk, if I can help you in any way, they'll set up about a 30-minute free consultation. I love trying to help lawyers grow their practices. That's gives me my self-worth and purpose in life now that I'm not practicing anymore. I enjoy it. That's why I do stuff like these commissions, these studies. I mean, it costs a lot of money, believe it or not, to do this, but I thought it was important, and I'm trying to help all the PILMMA members. And so we did this in 2021, and I kind of held it back just for the PILMMA members for like a year because I wanted them to have access to it. And now I'm kind of releasing it to everybody. You know what I'm saying? But I felt like they deserve first crack at the ball.
And as a reminder to listeners, that link will be in the show notes. So we'll include that resource with all of that data and all the findings there.
Yeah, and I've got, and at the end of it, I did report and actually put in my recommendations of stuff. I mean, I think I put like 12 things that I would tell you definitely ought to do based on this report. And most of it does not cost a lot of money. But if you would do these things, take this is like, I got 12 key takeaways. And probably more, but that's the key ones. So, I mean, I'm getting you a report and I'm spoon feeding you. So, you just got to, like you say, you just got to take action.
That's it. Thanks again, Ken.
All right. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Have a good one.
LAWsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next LAWsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.